Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff from California. He's the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, and he was an impeachment manager during Donald Trump's impeachment trial in the Senate. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you for being with us. This reminds me a bit of Donald Trump talking about the 400-pound guy in the basement who may have been involved in hacking elections. The misdirection or the redirection to China and Iran, in your evaluation, they're not non-events, but they're nowhere close to the efforts that the Russians are engaging in.
Well, this is a point that we've been making with the intelligence community, which is they need to distinguish for the American people who is doing what. These three actors are not the same in terms of their intentions, in terms of their actions, in terms of their capabilities. But, you know, clearly the administration is trying to push out this line that China is the only concern. But if you look carefully at the statement that the ODNI issued today, it says China has a preference, but Russia is engaged in actions. And I think that the intelligence community needs to be more explicit about this, and it can do so without compromising sources and methods. But clearly the president wishes to, blind himself and blind the country to what Russia is doing. And indeed, at that same press conference today, when he was confronted with the intelligence community saying Russia is interfering to denigrate his opponent, he expressed disbelief and said he doesn't care what anybody says.
Yeah, well, he hasn't cared the whole time. A couple nights ago, I spoke with Senator Blumenthal of Connecticut, who had one of those briefings, one of those in-camera briefings that to which you are entitled. And he came out and, again, was not able to share that classified information, but feels that that information should be declassified and shared with Americans in the interest of national security, in the interest of our elections. What's your view on the fact that you've been getting this information for a few weeks? It is apparently very alarming information.
Well, it is. And, when the president says, this is new information, the information is not new. All that's new is that the office of the director made it public. But unless the president is not being briefed on this and not reading his briefing materials, and it's certainly possible that his briefers are unwilling to confront him with Russian interference, with Russian bounties. They're just not willing to tell him because, as he said today, he doesn't care what anybody says. He is not going to think or believe ill of his friend Vladimir Putin. And the result is that our elections go unprotected, that our troops may go less protected than they should be because the commander-in-chief doesn't take it seriously. There is no reason why the intelligence community can't be more forthcoming, except it would displease Donald Trump. And that's simply not a good enough answer.
Has the Office of the Director of National Intelligence been politicized under this president? That was obviously the biggest fear about this, that office needs to be run by experts and needs to not be political. And it is not today actually run by an expert, and it sounds like it's political.
Well, look, the low ebb for the intelligence community, I think in recent memory, was the appointment of Rick Grinnell, who had none of the experience necessary for that job and was essentially a political hack for the president. And turn that top intelligence office into a political office to carry water for the president. Happily, he's gone. Whether Ratcliffe will continue that tradition or will have the independence from the president to fulfill that role, it's too early to tell. But it is concerning that we have had to essentially pull teeth to get the intelligence community to issue the statement it did today. And we still want them to share more with the American people. Both because the American people have a right to know these agencies are gathering this intelligence for policymakers and to protect the country and the public, but also, Ali, because it's a deterrent to the Russians. If you don't call them out, if you simply equate what the Russians are doing with what China may be doing or Iran may be doing or North Korea, and you fail to distinguish, then you're basically giving the Russians a green light because they know they won't be held accountable.
What's going on with your colleagues in the Senate? Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, who seem to be going down this weird rabbit hole of this Ukrainian legislator who's releasing audio of phone calls and sort of trying to change the focus onto Joe Biden again. I mean, these two gentlemen are smarter than to fall for this stuff, but they seem to be falling for this stuff.
Well, look, it has been the case, and this was certainly true in the House Intelligence Committee with Devin Nunes and many of the Republican members, that they were more than willing to push a Kremlin narrative about Ukraine interfering in the U.S. election in 2016 instead of Russia. That was the whole bogus CrowdStrike theory that the president was also pushing. But, they're at it still, and in the Senate as well, pushing out information, false information, to try to denigrate Joe Biden. This is very much in line with what the Kremlin is trying to do. It's very much in line with what the intelligence community acknowledged that Derkach is trying to do. And indeed, Derkach has said that he is sending materials to these very members of the House and Senate. I think this statement puts them all on notice that if they continue to pursue this, they're effectively pursuing a narrative that may have its origins in the Kremlin.
And I just want to underscore this. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence, which you and I have discussed, may be more political than it's ever been before, actually named Andrei Derkach as a source of this information. And these two senators are using Andrei Derkach's information to conduct hearings into Joe Biden's activities in Ukraine. So they're being told, they've been put on notice, you're using bad information and government resources to investigate this.
Well, look, I think at least some of the senators have denied getting information from Derkach, but Derkach has said that he has sent them information. And in the House Intelligence Committee, we have a receipt at the committee of materials that were sent by these same players for Mr. Nunes. So I don't think there's any question that these actors are pushing out this information. I also think that it's now clear from the director's statement today that Derkach is part of what they're describing and that members are now on notice. And I would hope that all the members, Democrats and Republicans, would be very careful about being part of anything that may be tied to a Kremlin disinformation campaign.
Chairman Schiff, I do want to ask you about the other comment the president made when he was asked at the press conference about this Russia information. He also pivoted to the most dangerous thing we face in this country in our elections is mail-in voting. That's simply not true, but he is again using this specific allegation about Russian interference to somehow tie it to, if you're worried about interference by people, what you should be worrying about is mail-in ballots. You are the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. You don't have to tell me anything that's going to, make you have to kill me because it's secret. But do you have any evidence that that's true, what the president said about mail-in voting being subject to foreign interference?
No. I mean, the president has been trying to delegitimize the votes of millions of people who, during a pandemic, will of necessity be voting by mail because he's terrified of losing and he wants to try to discredit the results. What I am concerned about is we saw in 2016, the Russians are more than happy to amplify disinformation, particularly when it helps Donald Trump. And so what we have to be on the lookout for is, are the Russians going to amplify the president's false claims about absentee voting? And should he challenge the results after the election, are the Russians going to then also intervene to sow additional chaos in the United States? That would be very consistent with their tradecraft. And of course, the president is doing nothing but inviting that kind of interference by today, disclaiming any belief in what he's being told and also discrediting the legitimate votes of millions of Americans.